you would probably consider fetuses people, right?
Of course.
Okay, so sometimes fetuses miscarry and they die, and they don't. When you're a fetus, you don't really
Sometimes
have.
people miscarry fetuses.
Yeah, sometimes fetuses die. Sometimes they just do. Sometimes they're just born with a brain defect. Sometimes they just die. And when you're a fetus, you don't really have the capability of action, of choice, and thus you have committed no sin. When you're a fetus, you're incapable of sin because you are incapable of action. And if you die as a fetus, you consider fetuses people, then fetuses would be incapable of sin because they're incapable of action. And if you die as a fetus, you have attained a theoretically sinless life.
Okay, so Zachary, how much credibility does the Bible have in your life?
Not that much.
Okay, so I'm going to give you an answer based on the Bible,
All right.
whether you believe it or not.
All right.
All right? In Psalm 51, behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Now, the reason that's biblically true is this, is that when Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, Romans chapter 5 says that we inherited that sin.
Original sin, yeah.
And so we're all by nature children of wrath. Let me read you some more verses here. In Psalm 58:3, even from birth the wicked go astray, from the womb they are wayward. Job 5:7, man is born to trouble, the sparks fly upward. Genesis 8:21, the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. And the one I mentioned in Ephesians 2:3, we were by nature children of wrath. And Proverbs 22:15, folly is bound up in the heart of a child. So, Zachary, we don't have to teach children how to sin.
It's inherent to people.
We have to teach them how not to sin.
I'd say it's a fairly, yeah, I agree with that. You see, I'm as an atheist, I really don't consider fetuses people necessarily. I consider consciousness to be the signifier of a person, and to me, a fetus is not a person until it reaches, I think, about the third trimester.
Fetus in Latin means young child.
But Latin roots do not necessarily correlate the thing. Do not correlate the truth. Like, a Latin root is not necessarily a signifier of the word. Fetuses can mean different things, different people. Like a Greek etymology is not necessarily perfectly mapped onto reality and how people experience the world. Just because fetus means young child does not mean that a fetus is a young child.
Okay, I want to give you some scientific facts about abortion. Number one, the fertilized egg is alive and growing.
Yeah.
It's not just neutral, it's actually growing.
Yep, I know
The
this.
fertilized egg is human with 46 human chromosomes.
Yep, I know this.
The fertilized egg is complete. All he or she needs is time to develop and mature. And here's the most important point, Zachary. You were once a fertilized egg.
Yep, I know. And I could have just easily have died or been
And
aborted.
you were just as much of a person then as you are now.
I disagree with that fact. I think that personhood comes from a person's lived experiences and their ability to think and consciously feel. And fetuses do not attain that capability until they're in about the third trimester when the brain starts developing. Fetuses have base instincts before then, but base instincts does not make a person. I wouldn't say a cow is a person because it's capable of feeling pain and capable of looking at the world around it.
Okay. So we know...
And I know the main argument that people who make is that theoretically, unlike cows, a fetus can grow into a full person if left untampered with. And that's the main argument, is that by aborting a fetus, you are essentially preventing the capability of life to grow.
But remember, the fertilized egg is alive and growing. It's not just neutral, it's actually growing.
As a society, we have accepted that individual autonomy is more important than a person's right to life. We value the right to life more than individual autonomy. We would force people to donate kidneys. We would force people to donate their bone marrow. And we just don't as a society. And so I feel like the rational expansion of get rid of all abortions is force people to donate kidneys, because both are rooted in the same consequence, a forced right to life.
Yeah, well, you say that we have autonomy of our bodies, but we are not allowed to use our bodies to assault others.
Yeah,
So
and that's generally where there's, as a society, we have to inform the trade-off between freedoms and not infringing on the freedoms of others. My main assertion is that I don't think fetuses are people. I think that a person is a thing. I don't think a single-celled organism, which the fetus starts as, is a person. I feel like personhood is a gradual slope. It is not a binary thing you toggle on and off. It is a slope of becoming a person. And I believe that you can categorically define a fetus as a person in the third trimester.
The unborn child has a genetic code that is distinctly different from the mother. And half of the child's 46 chromosomes come from the biological father. And so those distinctions alone, I think, would refute that you say that it's not a person. You look at all the major textbooks, Zachary, all the major textbooks will say that at conception is when a human being begins.
The textbooks see a human being. They say that's when a human being begins, but that's not when a person's rights begin. A person gets rights when they are a sentient being, and I simply don't think fetuses are sentient until they reach. Like I said,
define sentient.
sentience is the ability to think rationally and to view the world around you in a certain way and able to make complex emotions. And it's a very complicated thing. It's more of like a list of like 13 different things that we have.
Okay.
And fetuses don't begin to reach those things until they're not in the third trimester, when the brain begins to start developing fully. And the fetus is able to essentially have its earliest memories.
Okay, is your mother or father still alive?
Both of them are.
Okay, so if your mother was in a coma and she was not able to do those things that you just said, would we be allowed to kill her?
So a coma.
Even if she had a will beforehand that said that would be against her will.
I mean, we go to sleep all the time and we wake up. And
Would
we
we be allowed to kill her because she's not a sentient being at that point?
You are not a sentient being, but the thing is, there's a possibility.
Your mother wouldn't be a sentient being?
There's a possibility of
If she
going
was in a
back to being a
coma?
sentient being. She was a sentient being, then the coma happened, which, as far as I'm concerned, comas are just extended periods of sleep. So there's always a possibility that
What if she was to come out of her coma, Zachary?
Then my argument, I know the argument you're trying to make, which the argument you're trying to make is that she could theoretically become sentient again, and fetuses could theoretically become sentient. So thus, those two things are morally equivalent. And I'd say they are not morally equivalent. I would say that it's different because my mother starts as a sentient person, goes into a coma, which is essentially just like sleep, we all sleep, and then comes out a sentient person. And so that is different, where a fetus is never a sentient person, grows to a sentient person.
That's where I would disagree. Absolutely. Let me give you an example, all right? Now, I know that you don't give much credibility to the Bible.
I give some credibility
but I'm going to tell you this. In Psalm 139, 13 and 14, you knit me together in my mother's womb. And Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. But listen to this. This is really important. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the baby leaped in her womb. Luke 1:41. So we know that John the Baptist, 6 months along at Elizabeth's womb, Luke 1:36, responded when a pregnant Mary visited Elizabeth. And in
I'm not denying the fact that can happen. I'm
chapter
saying that
1,
third trimester is when that can happen.
Chapter 1, verse 42, Elizabeth said to Mary, "Blessed is the fruit of your womb," Jesus shortly after conception. And Elizabeth recognized the embryo, Zachary, inside Mary's womb, not as a clump of cells or as a potential human being or as a non-sentient human being, but as her Lord. Verse 43, chapter 1 of Luke.
Like I said, I don't put much stock in the Bible. Mainly, I used to, but not so much anymore. I understand and empathize with the Christian perspective that life begins at conception. Like,
And that's a scientific perspective too, Zachary.
I do not think that is a fundamentally silly thing to think. I think it's a very reasonable thing to think. I just don't agree with it. And also, a lot of scientists don't agree with it. Personhood is not a
Most scientists do, Zachary.
No, I don't want to get into this argument because we've had this argument before. I don't remember.
You look at the basic science textbooks, they all agree that life begins at conception.
They all say that a person starts at conception, but they don't agree that a person's human rights. This is not a question of science, this is a question of ethics. I understand and empathize with the Christian perspective that life begins at conception. Like,
And that's a scientific perspective too, Zachary.
I do not think that is a fundamentally silly thing to think. I think it's a very reasonable thing to think. I just don't agree with it.